To kick things off, we're starting with the state of the SNP. I'm here now with the Spectator's chairman, Andrew Neil, who's been following the story closely. Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us on Spectator TV. Now, in the sort of past month or so since Nicola Sturgeon resigned, we've had, for the SNP, we've had arrests, resignations, arguments over membership levels, a fractious leadership election. In all your time looking at politics, have you ever seen the implosion of a political party like this?
I would say no. I've never seen something unravel as quickly as this of a party unravelling. I mean, of course, Liz Truss's government unravelled pretty quickly. And I saw one commentator say that in the scale of disasters, it's somewhere between the Hindenburg and Liz Truss. And I think that probably does put it in the right context. I mean, we would never have thought this even 2 months ago. We would never have thought that Nicola Sturgeon's departure would lead to the unravelling of the position of the SNP in Scotland, and indeed the unravelling of the independence cause in Scotland as well. It is a remarkable change. I mean, only Shakespeare could cover, what a falling off there was. And we haven't yet had the police report. We haven't yet. The police are still in the middle or coming towards the end of their inquiries. There have been, as you say, a number of arrests. I see speculation in the Scottish media that even Nicola Sturgeon might be arrested and taken in for questioning. I mean, that is just incredible. So it's a story that is by no means over yet. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. We still don't know what this happened to the £600,000 they raid. I see there's now a rather expensive campervan in the equation as well. I mean, only in British politics could a campervan be a credible piece of evidence. So let's see where it unravels. However it unravels cannot be to the benefit of the SNP.
I mean, what do you think the Scottish public make of this? I mean, they must be just looking on with complete bafflement that this sort of domineering party that sort of dominated Scottish politics for years is now in complete anarchy.
Well, only a few months ago, Nicola Sturgeon could walk on water. Now she even stepping over a puddle is dangerous for her. She isn't waving; she's drowning, and I think the Scottish public are amazed at what's happened. I don't think they wholly understand it. I think it has discredited the SNP in the eyes of the voters, a party that hitherto has dominated Scottish politics and will, in its own way, I suspect, still remain the largest party. But it's not invincible anymore. It is not the voice of Scotland anymore, the way it has liked to portray itself. And I suppose the context to see this is what is happening is the inevitable denouement of what happens in one-party states. That you've had the SNP riding high on the hog for a long, long time now, almost for a generation, unchallenged by any of the other political parties in Scotland, with a rather tame media, which in many areas have been cheerleaders for it, with a bubble in Holyrood and in Edinburgh where there's no one there to criticise her or the SNP. Indeed, if anything, they want to cheer her to go further on. A party that's gone in hock to the radical Greens in Scotland as well. And I suppose in some way, and also you just can't question her. We saw that video of Nicola Sturgeon who got quite shirty when anyone dared to suggest that the finances of the SNP were anything but rosy and pristine. And so I think all that comes from being in power for too long, being unchallenged for too long, by not having an aggressive and robust enough media for too long as well. And although it was in the end bound to come to an end in some sticky way, I certainly never foresaw that it would come to an end in a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions.
Certainly spectacular. Where does this leave Hamza Yusuf now? I mean, he's tried to relaunch his party twice now. It's obviously been overshadowed by other events. Do you think he even has the capability to sort of lead the party through this?
Well, when this week he made his big kind of State of the Union, or what he would like it to be, State of the Breakup of the Union speech, about how he was going to run things in the weeks, months, years ahead, almost no one took any notice. It was overshadowed by all the other events we've been talking about. And I think that's part of his problem. The other events overshadow what he's trying to do, and no one's much interested in what he's trying to do as a result. And indeed, most dangerous for all politicians is not when they're being criticised. Politicians are always criticised. Even for a time, they can be ignored. You can survive that too. Things can swing back in your favour. But as I look at the coverage of him across the spectrum, he's become an object of derision. That's very dangerous for politicians. When you're derided, treated as a joke character, not taken seriously, that, I don't know how you recover for that. And I would say that all supporters of the Union, those who want to see Scotland and England remain in the Union, that is the United Kingdom, I suspect they ought to be crossing their fingers that the current First Minister remains First Minister for the foreseeable future. Because I think it's impossible for him to deliver on the breakup of the United Kingdom. If Nicola Sturgeon couldn't do it, I see no way that he is going to be able to do it either. So at the moment, he is probably the best guarantor of the continued union between Scotland and England at the moment. And I think if Miss Forbes, his main rival, was to take over, she'd be a more formidable figure. And I see a lot of commentary of people saying he may not be around for long. You know, they'll do badly now. They'll lose seats to Labour in the general election. They'll lose even more seats in the next Holyrood election. He won't be there for long. He'll be replaced. I think if you believe in the Union, you ought to keep your fingers crossed that that doesn't happen. But it's a grim time for the SNP. It's a grim time for those who want to break up the United Kingdom. It's a grim time for the independence movement at the moment. And I would say that the Union seems to me to be as safe as it has been since Scotland voted 55-45 to remain in the Union in that referendum way back in 2014.
Would you go as far to say even that independence as an issue has been buried for a generation even, or do you think that's pushing it too much?
Well, the problem is in Scotland we don't know what a generation is. We were told that the last referendum had settled the matter. Indeed, Nicola Sturgeon implied that it had settled the matter for a generation. It turns out that, of course, a generation in Scotland may be only 5 years or 10 years. And of course, given male longevity in the west of Scotland, which is among the lowest in the Western world, maybe that is the correct generation, the correct definition of generation in Scotland. Gone for a generation? We live in a world where things can change very quickly. But it isn't just the crisis that currently faces the SNP, which then becomes a crisis for the independent movement, because the SNP is the vanguard, is the vehicle by which independence was meant to happen. All the questions that were raised in the 2014 referendum, particularly the economic questions about what currency would be used, would there be a border between Berwick and Carlisle? How easy would it be for an independent Scotland to rejoin the EU? How would you finance the budget deficit on independence, which currently is financed by the rest of the Union? How could you borrow in a new currency? All these questions, which were important in 2014, they're even more important now, and not one of these questions has been convincingly answered. So whoever is running the SNP, even if they were managed to get the show back on the road after this car crash of a period, they've still got these questions to answer. And they've not come close in any way to doing so. So I think, John, maybe a generation out is not, it's certainly gone as a prospect, independence, for the foreseeable future.
And it may be now that the SNP implosion has kind of left a bit of a vacuum at the centre of Scottish politics. Do you get the sense that Labour are the ones who can really benefit out of this? Or are they not a serious enough proposition?
Labour will be the ones that will benefit from this. By how much, we don't know. The Tories can't benefit from it because they're the party of government in Westminster. And there will be an anti-government vote, not just in Scotland, But throughout the United Kingdom, that is just a price you pay if you've been in power for the number of years the Tories have been in power, since 2010. So Labour is the party that will benefit, and that will help Keir Starmer in his efforts to form the next government UK-wide. How many seats he will get? Well, no prospect of going back to the days when the Scottish Labour Party had over 40 seats in Scotland and helped it form governments in Westminster. I would be surprised if they even got more than 20 seats, but they could get 15. They could pick up, which is why I said earlier that the SNP, for all its travails and all the mess it's in my view, is still likely to remain the biggest party in Scotland for some time to come yet. It's just people have got used to voting that way. But it pays a price for that. Increasingly, it's become the party of central Scotland, of the central belt between Glasgow and Edinburgh, and less the party of where it started, which is in the more rural areas and the northeast of Scotland, the prosperous northeast of Scotland. But it's worried about Labour, and it's coming out with policies designed to appeal to that former Labour vote in the west of Scotland in particular. It will pay a price for that. Labour will pick up a number of these seats in the greater Glasgow region, and even 15 would be a big help to Keir Starmer. I think at the moment he's got 15, last time I looked, would be 15 times the seats he's got now. So I think it is going to go to some extent Labour's way.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andrew.